Okay, well, we are back at the Good Game Roundtable. I've got Goose and Nick with me, and we're going to talk remasters today because we've had a crazy amount of remasters recently. We've got BioShock, it's just coming out, Resident Evil 4, the Dead Rising series.
There's a lot of them.
What's going on?
I think at this stage, there's a lot of sequels coming out later down the line, at least with Dead Rising and with Resident Evil. And so it's a great way to get people interested in the franchise again. I know I'm going to play Dead Rising and go, I can't wait for the next one.
I'm thrilled because a lot of these games I don't own on consoles or computers that I have now. I didn't buy a lot of these on PC. So something like BioShock, which I consider to be one of the greatest video games of all time, thrilled about that collection because I actually get to have it on something, I get it on PC. Now I can keep it forever as opposed to get it on the 360, and I don't really have the way to play that anymore because I don't have a 360 anymore.
Do you think you're going to play through all 3 games though?
Generally, I'm not someone who likes to replay story games.
Sure.
I'm kind of one and done with them. But there are exceptions for this. I tend to not dip too much with the remasters, but the Nathan Drake collection and BioShock are the 2 that I just go, had to do.
I was about to say, I'm not one to replay games either, except the Nathan Drake collection came out and I started again with the first Uncharted, and oh my gosh, for starters, it's so wonderful to see how far we've come. And to be able to play through the series, even the way it's been remastered, obviously it's been improved a little bit, but there's still some noticeable differences in the way the game looks and the way the game plays, and it's really exciting to kind of see that evolution throughout the series.
There's definitely a timeline where I think you can't go any further back than a certain point, or if you remaster something from here, it's going to still look and play as shonky as it did back in the day. And I think, fortunately, something like that first Uncharted was right on the cusp, because I'd never played that one. I'd played 2 and 3, and so this was a great chance for me to jump in and finally play the first one.
Oh man, like the whole Elena origin kind of that romance.
Suddenly everything made sense.
Well, I guess it kind of takes us to a point of what really makes a remaster versus a remake, because if you were to, refresh the first Assassin's Creed, I would want that remade.
Yeah.
You know, I think the controls and everything would need to be updated. I'd want more interesting quests, but I'd still want that game to kind of fit into the rest of the series as the origin story for that series.
But when you talk about remaking, you're only talking, I guess, about adding just those features that we take for granted now.
Little tweaks, yeah.
Lots and lots of little tweaks, so the game feels like a current gen version of an Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah, totally.
You're not going to go in there and change story or move things around and really remake it. It's just going to be that. Yeah.
I think, when you talk about a remaster, it's definitely updating the visuals and maybe some of the controls. I think with the Nathan Drake collection, they changed his ability to latch onto things and a bit of his movement. They made a lot of that more fluid, which is something that we, the platforming and his movement through the game, which is really important.
Yeah.
I think for me, when it comes to what makes me pick up a remaster, it's I want to recapture the feeling I had when I played that game in the first place. So for me, the best remasters are ones that make me think that this is how the game was all along.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, this is how it looked the whole time, or this is how it played, and those little tweaks where you just go, oh yeah, this is my memory. This is my memory of this, and it becomes a showcase.
So you want the updates to be subtle enough that you feel like it was that way all along?
Which is why we're talking about the back button where you see the old graphics or whatever. That's when you go, oh, right, of course it didn't actually look like this, but this is actually what time and my memory and, alcohol has done.
You hold a lot of that stuff with a certain air of romanticism in your mind, but when you have to sit down and play something for 5, 6, 10 hours, you don't want to be like stuffing around with awkward controls and poor hit detection.
I guess often I'll just end up playing the first 10 minutes of all these remasters and go, those were the days, and I'm done.
And I feel like there is the issue, though, that a lot of these games, they're being done by B teams within the studio, or they farm it out to one of these companies that just do ports and remasters, and they're not the ones who originally made the game. And that's that thing where if it feels careless, like the Marvel Ultimate Alliance came out recently, looks terrible. It's a 10-year-old game, looks awful, but also it had a bunch of DLC originally with the game, and that's not included on the disc. So this remaster is missing characters that was the DLC, and that's where you go, why? Like you didn't try it all.
I think it makes sense to have the B team on it, though. You want your best people working on the new stuff, and essentially, kind of releasing a remaster isn't. I don't think it's as big a cash grab as we think it could potentially be. I think it's a way. There's a lot of games that I probably wouldn't go back and play, but if they remastered it, I'd think twice. How much time has to pass before you consider remastering something? I mean, has enough time been since BioShock? It feels like not for me.
No, because BioShock is so old. Like, BioShock is actually, like, quite old.
Am I just forgetting how much time has passed?
Maybe.
You've been in a fugue state. It's actually...
Well, what about, there's the Skyrim remaster, which is coming out. That's been, 5 years?
Oh, yeah.
Is that long enough?
Let that game die. Just stop. Let Bethesda make good new games.
sometimes it's just the collection of these games. Like in the case of BioShock, I think it has been too soon since the most recent game, but give me all three of those games.
You just want it on your shelf.
You don't play games at all.
No, I just like to have them on a shelf. I get a real sense of satisfaction. I have played those games in the past, and with the Dead Rising games...
Especially when they package it with some little leather box thing around it.
I want it in this beautiful little collector's edition. I'm going to put it there, and I know that I can go back to it
when they make it
anytime
look like some kind of classy, like, library book collection.
And you can sort of slide it in and say,
board.
I have read those books, or I played those games.
You're like video game Dexter. Like, you just have this collection.
The problem is, that will only last until the next generation comes out, and then they bring out the even, more fancy version.
And that's why, and obviously this can't be an argument for everybody because you need a decent rig, but getting this stuff on PC is probably the best idea because it stays playable. It doesn't really matter how old it gets. Every time you change consoles, if they're not going to enable really strong backwards compatibility, then that's why a lot of this stuff comes out each time. And I love bringing these old games back as long as the care is put into it. I think that's the thing, right? Like if you feel as though publishers and the devs care as much about the games you do, then it's an investment in something cool and not just a cash grab.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, like it or not, remasters have become quite a significant part of the release schedule for a year. People really expect them. And I think maybe that's more so now because we're still in the early stages of a new console generation, so it feels like maybe it's more justified.
I think we are seeing so many games where they're making sequels or they're revisiting them to make the next sequel. It means that they're going to go back and they're going to jazz up those old games again, and I think it's kind of exciting.
As they should. That should be a punishment for bringing back an old series. You have to bring back the best version.
If you can't move on, you've got to go back.
And if you can't beat the remaster with your new game, maybe don't do it in the first place.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can all agree that remasters can be great if they're done well. What do you think of remasters? Are they good? Bad? Bit of a cash grab? Let us know online.
Are you going to buy COD? Don't buy COD.
You're going to buy it. You're pathetic. I'm pathetic too. It's fine. We're all pathetic.